All right, strap in, everyone, because today's deep dive is going to be a wild one.
It really is a fascinating case.
We're talking about a legal battle that went all the way to the Caribbean Court of Justice.
Definitely highlights some of the complexities you see in international finance.
Oh, absolutely, especially when you've got a framework like the Caribbean community involved.
Exactly.
And this case is called Ellis Richards, Medical Benefits Board, Spencer Thomas, Others v. the State of Trinidad and Tobago.
Catchy title.
Right, rolls right off the tongue.
You know, it makes you wonder who comes up with these names.
I know, right? But anyway, this case, it all revolves around this conglomerate, a company called CL Financial.
Huge company. I mean, they were involved in everything.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we're talking banking, insurance. They were even in agriculture and media.
If it was a business in Trinidad and Tobago, chances are CL Financial had a hand in it.
They were practically the Trinidadian economy at one point, it seems like.
Pretty much. So when the 2009 financial crisis hit,
Oh, boy.
yeah, it was like a domino effect.
CL Financial went under, and the whole Caribbean felt the tremors. It was a financial earthquake.
Not an exaggeration.
So, to really grasp why this ended up in court, we need to talk about one of the financial products at the center of it all, an EFPA.
Executive Flexible Premium Annuity.
Yeah, tell me about it. It's a mouthful, isn't it? An EFPA.
Yeah.
And to be honest, when I first read it, I thought, this sounds about as thrilling as watching paint dry.
Well, I mean, it's not exactly the most exciting topic at a cocktail party.
Right. But stick with us, folks, because this is important. So, what is an EFPA? In a nutshell.
Okay, so imagine you've got a savings account, right?
Got it.
But it also has some elements of an insurance policy mixed in. So you pay premiums regularly.
Like a retirement plan, sort
Yeah,
of?
exactly. You're building towards something in the future.
Okay, now that makes more sense. So, how does this tie back into CL Financial and this whole court case?
Well, CL Financial, they owned this insurance company based in the Bahamas.
BO's, you're right.
And guess what they were selling?
EFPAs.
EFPAs. And when CL Financial went belly up, BAICO went down with it.
Leaving a lot of people high and dry, I imagine.
You could say that again.
So this is where things get really interesting, right? Trinidad and Tobago, they're staring down this potential economic meltdown.
Nobody wants to see their economy go down in flames.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So they step in, right, and they decide to bail out some parts of CL Financial.
Trying to contain the damage.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the part they decided to bail out was BI, another insurance company.
Here's the catch.
BI was based in Trinidad and Tobago,
Bingo.
but not BICO. They didn't bail out BIGO, even though it was owned by the same parent company.
Nope. And that decision, well, it didn't sit right with a lot of folks, especially BIC policyholders and other Caribbean nations. They were saying, hold on a minute, if you're bailing out one part of this company, what about us?
We were all under the same umbrella.
Exactly. And that's when the legal battle kicked off. BICO policyholders, they were crying foul.
Seems like a valid complaint.
Yeah.
So how did they argue their case? What were their legal arguments?
Well, they basically argued that Trinidad and Tobago, they were playing favorites.
Favorites.
Yeah, they claimed Trinidad and Tobago discriminated against them because of their nationality.
Ah, so this wasn't just about a bailout. This was about international law.
Exactly. And they pointed to Article 7 of the revised Treaty of Chaguaramas. That's the agreement that governs CARICOM.
Okay, so big picture here, CARICOM, it's all about, like, Caribbean unity, right?
Right. Regional cooperation, economic integration, that sort of thing.
So were the BICO policyholders basically saying, hey, you're going against the spirit of CARICOM by leaving us out in the cold?
Pretty much. They argued that, yeah, BICO was technically based in the Bahamas, but it was heavily managed from Trinidad and Tobago.
So it wasn't some totally separate entity.
Exactly, like two sides of the same coin, you know?
Okay, so they were claiming Trinidad and Tobago had their hands in the cookie jar all along.
Essentially. And they didn't stop there. They also brought up Article 184 of the treaty,
Which is about?
Consumer Protection.
Oh, okay.
It basically says that CARICOM countries, they have a duty to protect their citizens, make sure they have some recourse if a company wrongs them, especially when it comes to financial matters.
So the BAICO policyholders were saying Trinidad and Tobago had a duty to protect them from this kind of fallout.
That's the gist of it.
You can't just leave us hanging. So what did Trinidad and Tobago have to say for themselves? Did they just say, tough luck?
Oh, well, not in those exact words.
Okay.
But they did argue that, look, they had to draw a line somewhere.
A line.
Yeah, they were like, our primary responsibility is to our own citizens and our own economy.
Right, so they're saying bailing out a company officially registered in the Bahamas, that wasn't their job.
Exactly. They also argued that extending the bailout that far would be a slippery
A
slope.
slippery slope.
Yeah, like where do you draw the line? If they bail out Bay Seco, then what's next? Any company with even a loose connection to Trinidad and Tobago.
So they were saying, we'll help our own, but that's where it stops.
Pretty much.
But wouldn't that set a dangerous precedent, though, for CARICOM? Like, it sounds like a recipe for every nation just looking out for themselves.
That was a concern a lot of people had. And you know what? It gets even more interesting. Because CARICOM itself, they got pulled into this whole thing.
Wait, what? CARICOM? Like the organization?
Well, their legal team, at least.
Okay, hold on. How does that even work? What were they doing there?
They were brought in as what's called a friend of the court.
A friend of the court. So they weren't actually picking sides.
Not officially. They were there to offer some insight into the treaty itself, like what were the intentions behind it, all that.
Okay, so CARICOM, playing the neutral party, trying to shed some light on the situation.
Exactly. And what they pointed out was pretty interesting.
What's that?
They said that Article 184, the one about consumer protection, the one everybody was citing,
Yeah.
it doesn't actually have a whole lot of teeth,
Teeth. What do you mean?
meaning there aren't any strong mechanisms to actually enforce it.
Wait, so this whole case, all these arguments, and they were hinging on an article that's basically a strongly worded suggestion.
Pretty much.
Wow. So what happened? What did the court decide? Who did they side with?
The Caribbean Court of Justice ultimately sided with Trinidad and Tobago.
Really? So no dice for the bailout policyholders.
They dismissed the claims.
Wow, but why? What was their reasoning?
Well, the court agreed that Trinidad and Tobago's actions, they were mainly about self-preservation.
Protecting their own economy.
Right. And they basically said that requiring them to bail out bailout policyholders, too, that would be like overstepping their boundaries, meddling in the affairs of another sovereign nation.
Right, because BICO was a Bahamian entity.
Exactly. Extraterritoriality is the fancy legal term for it.
Extraterritorial. Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
It does seem like they were trying to prevent a bigger disaster.
All right.
But it's still got to be a tough pill to swallow for those BIFU policyholders who lost out.
It's a complicated issue, for sure. And the court even acknowledged that. They said that, yeah, clearer guidelines are probably needed within CARICOM, especially when it comes to these cross-border financial matters and consumer protection. And they said they hoped that member states had taken steps to prevent or at least mitigate something like this from happening again. But
But
it was more of a hopeful wish than, a binding statement.
a hopeful wish. Well, that's not very reassuring, is it? I mean, this whole situation, it really makes you think. International agreements, economic meltdowns, legal battles. It's a lot to unpack. A lot to unpack is an understatement.
Mm-hmm.
So where do we even go from here? What does a case like this mean for the future of CARICOM? We've got to have some answers somewhere, right?
Well, I hate to say it, but the answers might be a little more complicated than you'd hope for.
Oh, no, don't tell me that.
It's just this whole situation, it really highlights that CARICOM, for all their talk of regional solidarity, they've still got a ways to go.
You're saying this whole one Caribbean family thing, maybe it's not as rock solid as it sounds.
It's more like they're still laying the foundation.
Right.
In this case, it kind of exposed some of the cracks in that foundation.
So how do they fix it? How do they prevent something like this from happening again?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Should there be stricter rules about bailouts? What about consumer protection? Should there be stronger mechanisms that cross borders? These are things CARICOM really needs to be thinking about.
It's like they need some kind of emergency plan.
Mm-hmm.
You know, a playbook for when a financial hurricane hits.
Exactly. In this case, this could be the wake-up call they needed. It's one thing to talk about unity and cooperation when times are good, but when a crisis hits, that's the real test.
And in this case, it seems like the pressure revealed some pretty significant disagreements.
Definitely. International agreements, they're only as strong as the countries that are part of them, It takes a commitment to uphold those agreements, even when it's hard, even when it means putting regional interests above your own.
Not always an easy thing to do.
No.
But if CARICOM wants to reach its full potential, it's something they're going to have to figure out.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
So for everyone listening, here's something to ponder. How do you think CARICOM should navigate these challenges? How can they create a system that balances those national interests with regional solidarity?
Especially when we're talking about something as important as, protecting people's money, their livelihoods. Something to think about maybe the next time you're enjoying that Caribbean sunshine.